They say blood is thicker than water, but they never tell you that blood is also a lot easier to spill. My name is Chloe. I am 34 years old, and for my entire life, I have been the ghost writer for a man who did not deserve a single word of my story. My brother Jackson is 31, and he is the kind of man who walks into a room and assumes the oxygen belongs to him. He is charming. He is handsome. He has that easy smile that makes people want to give him things. And for 31 years, my parents have given him everything, while I was expected to provide the foundation he stood on. Growing up in our house was like living in a theater where Jackson was the only actor on stage, and I was the entire stage crew. I handled the lighting, the sound, the props, and the script, while he took the final bow to thunderous applause. I remember a specific moment when I was 14 and he was 11. I had spent 3 weeks working on a history project about the Industrial Revolution. I had built a moving model of a steam engine and written a 12-page paper that my teacher said was college level. Jackson had done nothing for his own project. The night before it was due, he cried to our mother, Elena. He told her he was overwhelmed and that he just did not understand the material. My mother looked at me with that look she always had. It was a look that said my hard work was a resource to be mined for Jackson's benefit. She told me that since I was so smart, I should just give Jackson my model and write him a quick report. She said I could make a new one for myself by morning. I stayed up all night crying and building a second, inferior model while Jackson took my masterpiece to school. He won the district prize. My parents put his trophy on the mantelpiece and told everyone how proud they were of their son. They told me that I was a good sister for helping him. That was the first time I realized that in my family, my value was measured by how much I could sacrifice for my brother. Now, at 34, I work as a senior analyst for a global logistics firm. It is a high-pressure environment where data is king and efficiency is the only metric that matters. I love my job because the numbers do not lie. They do not have favorites. They do not care about a charming smile or a firm handshake, or at least that is what I thought. Jackson works at the same firm, though in a different department. He is in business development, which is basically a fancy way of saying he plays golf with clients and takes long lunches. He got the job because I polished his resume and coached him through every single interview question. I even wrote the case study he had to present during his final round. For 3 years, I have been quietly fixing his mistakes and ghost-writing his emails so he would not get fired. I told myself I was doing it for the family. I told myself that if Jackson succeeded, my parents would be happy, and maybe then they would finally see me. But the stakes changed when our CEO, Mr. Henderson, announced a massive opening for the Vice President of Operations. It was the kind of role that comes once in a decade. It came with a 6-figure raise, a corner office, and real power. To apply, candidates had to submit a comprehensive 5-year efficiency audit. This was not just a summary. It was a deep dive into every logistical bottleneck, every wasted cent, and every potential for growth across 4 continents. It was the hardest project I had ever faced. I spent 6 months on it. I worked 16-hour days. I stopped going to the gym. I stopped seeing my friends. I lived on coffee and spreadsheets. I built a proprietary algorithm into the Excel sheets that could predict fuel price fluctuations and their impact on shipping routes with 99% accuracy. It was a 40-page masterpiece of data science and operational strategy. I was proud of it. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had created something that belonged entirely to me. I kept the file on a shared cloud drive that I used for work, but I had it locked behind a password, or so I thought. 2 weeks before the deadline, Jackson came to my apartment. He looked like a wreck. He sat on my sofa and put his head in his hands. He told me that his department was failing. He said that Mr. Henderson had given him a warning, and that if he did not show some serious initiative, he was going to be let out. He started crying. He told me that he felt like a failure compared to me. He said he knew I was working on the audit, and that he just wanted to see what a real professional report looked like, so he could try to pull something together for himself. He looked so small and so defeated. I felt that old, familiar tug of sisterly guilt. I thought about my parents and how devastated they would be if Jackson lost his job. I thought about how he had always been the favorite and how much pressure that must put on him to keep up appearances. I told him I would not give him the report, but I would show him the structure. I opened my laptop and pulled up the file. I showed him the table of contents. I showed him the way I had mapped out the international shipping hubs. I even showed him the dashboard of the algorithm I had built. His eyes were wide. He kept asking questions about how the data was linked and where I had pulled the numbers from. I felt a surge of pride. I thought he was finally respecting my intellect. I told him that he could do this too, if he just put in the effort. I told him I would help him brainstorm his own ideas. He thanked me over and over. He hugged me and said I was the best sister in the world. He left an hour later, and I felt good. I felt like I had helped him without compromising my own work. I went back to my laptop and finished the final formatting. I was going to submit it on Monday morning. I spent that Sunday night feeling a sense of peace. I had done the work, I had the data. I was the best person for the job, and for once, I was not going to hide in the shadows. I was going to walk into that boardroom and claim my place at the table. I did not know that while I was sleeping, the person I trusted most was systematically erasing my existence. I did not know that the brother I had protected for 30 years had just spent the last few hours copying every single byte of my data onto a thumb drive he had stolen from my desk while I was making him coffee. I went to sleep dreaming of a promotion, unaware that I was about to wake up to a nightmare that would rewrite the history of my entire family. Monday morning arrived with a cold, crisp clarity that usually made me feel energized. I walked into the office with my head held high, ready to upload the final draft of my 40-page report. I sat at my desk, took a sip of my coffee, and logged into the shared cloud drive. I clicked on my personal folder. It was empty. I felt a sudden jolt of electricity run through my chest. I refreshed the page. Nothing. I checked the trash folder. Nothing. I checked the version history. The entire file path had been scrubbed. My heart started racing so fast I could hear it in my ears. I reached into my top drawer for my backup thumb drive. I always kept a physical copy just in case of a server crash. My hand met empty space. I pulled the drawer all the way out, dumping pens and paperclips onto the floor. The drive was gone. I sat there in the silence of the early morning office, and the realization hit me like a physical blow to the stomach. Jackson. I remembered him standing by my desk on Saturday while I was in the kitchen. I remembered him asking if he could borrow a pen. He had not taken a pen. He had taken my entire career. I stood up, my legs feeling like lead, and walked toward the main conference room. I saw the light on under the door. I pushed it open. Mr. Henderson was sitting there, and Jackson was standing at the head of the table. A projector was humming, and on the screen was the title page of my report. It had his name on it. Jackson Miller, Vice President of Operations candidate. He was already halfway through the introduction. He did not even flinch when I walked in. He just looked at me with a patronizing smile and said, "Oh, hey Chloe, you are just in time to see the end of my presentation." Mr. Henderson looked up from a printed copy of the report, the 40-page report that I had bled for. "Chloe, come in," Mr. Henderson said. "Jackson has just been showing me some truly revolutionary work. I have never seen an efficiency audit this detailed." I stood there, trembling, my voice caught in my throat. I managed to find it, but it sounded thin and weak. "Mr. Henderson, that is my report," I said. "I wrote every word of that. Jackson stole it from my drive this weekend." The room went dead silent. Jackson sighed, a long, theatrical sound of disappointment. He looked at Mr. Henderson and shook his head. "Sir, I am so sorry you have to see this," Jackson said. "Chloe has been under a lot of stress lately. I told her I was working on this project, and she got very competitive about it. I think the pressure of the VP role is just getting to her." He walked over to me and tried to put a hand on my shoulder. I flinched away as if his skin were acid. "Chloe, let's go get some water," he said in a soothing, fake voice. "You are clearly confused." I looked at the CEO. I told him I had the original data sets on my home computer. I told him I could prove I had been working on it for 6 months. Jackson just countered by saying that he had been the one sharing his ideas with me and that I must have convinced myself they were mine. He told Mr. Henderson that I was struggling with my mental health and that he had been trying to support me. He looked so sincere. He looked like the grieving brother of a sister who had lost her mind. Mr. Henderson looked between us, his face unreadable. He told me to go home and take the rest of the day off. He said we would discuss my lack of a submission later. I was ushered out of the office like a child having a tantrum. I went home and collapsed on my floor. I called my parents, sobbing. I told them what Jackson had done. I expected them to be outraged. I expected them to demand he confess. Instead, my mother's voice was cold and steady. "Chloe," she said, "Jackson told us you might react this way. He said you were jealous of his progress." I screamed into the phone that it was my work. I told them about the months of coffee and the missed sleep. My father joined the call. He told me to grow up. He said that Jackson finally had a chance to be someone important. He said that I was already successful and that I did not need this promotion as much as he did. He told me that if I truly loved my brother, I would just let him have this win. He said I was smart enough to do it again, but Jackson needed this to save his life. They were asking me to sign over my soul so their favorite child could keep pretending to be a hero. They told me that if I went to HR or tried to ruin this for him, they would never speak to me again. They said I was being a selfish, bitter woman who could not stand to see her brother succeed. I hung up the phone and sat in the dark for hours. I felt completely erased. My work was gone, my family had abandoned me, and my career was about to be handed to a thief. Later that evening, I got a company-wide email. Mr. Henderson announced that Jackson's presentation was the most impressive he had seen in 20 years. He scheduled a final technical review for Wednesday morning to finalize the promotion. I was mentioned in a small footnote at the bottom, stating that I was being reevaluated for my current role due to a failure to meet project deadlines. I was 34 years old, and I was about to lose everything I had built because I had been a good sister. I looked at my computer screen, the blue light reflecting in my tear-stained eyes. I felt a surge of cold, hard rage. It was a different kind of anger than I had ever felt before. It was not the loud, screaming anger of a child. It was the quiet, calculating anger of an analyst who had just found a fatal error in a system. I realized that Jackson was a thief, but he was also an idiot. He had stolen the car, but he had no idea how the engine worked. He had spent his whole life taking credit for things he did not understand. He thought that by putting his name on the cover, the words inside became his. But words have a history. Data has a trail. And I was the one who knew exactly where the bodies were buried because I was the one who had dug the graves. I spent the rest of the night digging through my system files, looking for the one thing Jackson was too arrogant to even look for. I began to build my own trap, one bit of data at a time. Tuesday was a blur of silence and preparation. I did not go into the office. I did not answer the frantic, guilty texts from my mother or the bragging, taunting messages from Jackson. He actually had the nerve to text me asking for the password to one of the encrypted tabs in the Excel sheet. He said he wanted to make sure he could explain it to Henderson. I did not reply. I spent the day at my kitchen table, surrounded by printouts and logs. I knew that Jackson's technical review was set for Wednesday at 10 in the morning. That was my window. I arrived at the office early on Wednesday. I did not go to my desk. I went straight to the executive floor and sat outside Mr. Henderson's office. His assistant tried to tell me he was busy, but I told her it was a matter of corporate liability. I told her there was a significant security breach in the data Jackson had presented. That got her attention. 10 minutes later, Mr. Henderson opened his door. He looked tired. He looked at me with a mix of pity and frustration. "Chloe, I told you to take time off," he said. I stood up and handed him a folder. It did not contain the report. It contained 4 pages of metadata logs. "Mr. Henderson, I am not here to argue about who wrote the words," I said. "I am here to show you who owns the data." He looked at the first page. I explained that every file created on our company network has a digital fingerprint. I showed him that the 40-page report Jackson presented had been created on my account 6 months ago. I showed him the total editing time. My account showed over 200 hours of active work on that specific file. I then showed him the log for Jackson's account. It showed he had opened the file for the first time on Sunday night at 11 p.m. He had spent exactly 10 minutes in the file before saving it under a new name. Mr. Henderson's face went from annoyed to stone cold. He told me to come inside. He called Jackson into the office. Jackson walked in with a smug grin, wearing a brand new suit he had probably bought with the bonus he thought he was getting. He saw me and his smile faltered for a split second, but he recovered quickly. "Oh, Chloe, still trying to make a scene," he said. He looked at Henderson. "Sir, I thought we agreed she needed some space." Mr. Henderson did not look up from the logs. "Jackson, sit down," he said. Jackson sat. He started talking about how he had refined the shipping routes since the presentation. Mr. Henderson interrupted him. He turned his laptop screen around and showed Jackson the metadata. He asked Jackson to explain why the file properties said the document was created by Chloe and why Jackson had only spent 10 minutes editing a 40-page technical audit. Jackson did not even blink. He said that I must have set up the template for him months ago because I was his assistant on the project. He said he had done all the hard work on his personal computer and just moved it to the company drive at the end. It was a lie, and he said it with such confidence that for a second, I saw Mr. Henderson waver. Jackson was good at this. He was a professional liar. But I had one more thing. Mr. Henderson, please turn to page 22 of the printed report, I said. Jackson looked confused. Henderson flipped the pages. I told him to look at the section on fuel hedging. I told him to look at the blank space in the right-hand margin and highlight it with a digital cursor on the screen. Henderson did as I asked. As the blue highlight box passed over the white space, words appeared. I had used a ghost watermark technique. I had written my name, my employee ID number, and the date of every single major update in white text that matched the background. It was invisible to the naked eye, but it was hard-coded into the document layers. Every few pages, hidden in the margins, my name appeared like a ghost. Chloe Miller, Chloe Miller, Chloe Miller. The room went so quiet I could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Jackson's face went from tan to a sickly, pale gray. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The charisma was gone. The easy smile had vanished. He looked like exactly what he was, a thief caught with his hand in the vault. Mr. Henderson stood up. He did not yell. He just looked at Jackson with pure disgust. You didn't just steal from your sister, Jackson, he said. You tried to commit corporate fraud to take a leadership position you are clearly unqualified for. You are fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. You have 10 minutes to clear your desk. Jackson started to beg. He looked at me, his eyes full of tears, and asked me how I could do this to him. He said we were family. I looked him straight in the eyes. We were family when I was doing your work, I said. But when you stole my life, you decided we were just competitors. And you lost. Security took him by the arms and led him out. He was crying like a child. Mr. Henderson turned to me. He apologized for not believing me sooner. He told me that the VP position was mine if I still wanted it. I told him I wanted it, but I wanted a different office. I did not want to see the hallway where Jackson used to walk. I went back to my desk and saw the missed calls from my parents. I called them back. My mother started screaming immediately, telling me that Jackson had just called her from the parking lot, hysterical. She told me I was a monster for getting my own brother fired. She said I had ruined his life over a stupid job. I told her that Jackson had ruined his own life when he decided to be a thief. I told her that for 34 years, I had been the daughter who did everything right, and they had still chosen the son who did everything wrong. I told them that I was done being the foundation for a house that didn't want me. I told them that if they wanted to support Jackson, they could pay his rent, because I was never giving him another cent or another word. I hung up and blocked both of their numbers. For the first time in my life, I felt light. I felt like I could finally breathe. I moved into my new office a week later. It is a corner office with a view of the city. I have a team of analysts now. I tell them on their first day that in this office, credit goes to the person who does the work. I tell them that data is the only thing that matters. I am 34 years old, and I am no longer the invisible sister. I am the vice president of operations. I am the woman who knows the value of a timestamp. And most importantly, I am the only person I have to answer to. My brother is gone, my parents are a memory, and my name is written in the margins of everything I build. It is not written in white text anymore. It is written in bold. And this time, nobody is going to erase it.